Okay, so before I launch into this video, yes, it is a little bit cooler this morning, so you may hear the sound of a snoring chihuahua in the background. Also, just a little apology for no video yesterday, as for those of you who were probably looking out for the video, you probably already are aware that I have a broken shoulder. Basically, yesterday was my first physio session, and aside from that, I just hit a point of exhaustion. When you've spent 4 weeks pretty much only sleeping in an armchair, with the occasional lie down on the couch, it catches up with you. So yesterday was pretty much just a chill out day, catching up with Australian Idol. I must admit, guilty pleasure. Listening to a bit of music, just basically relaxing. But let's get back into it today. So, I know I said when I covered the previous interviews with Stearns' friends that I wasn't going to cover the final two that were on Gray Hughes' channel. But what I discovered was a lot of people pointed out in the comments section that they won't watch Gray Hughes and they won't give him the views. And I can respect that. So I am going to cover the two friend interviews that I didn't originally cover. The reason I chose not to cover those two specifically was because I didn't think they had as much value as the two that I did cover. So originally the thought was, okay, well, I'm not sure how significant they are. And one of them, the one that I'm covering today, Frank, his particular interview, I felt that Gray was doing a lot of leading questions, and he was also inserting a lot of his own opinions into the interview. And I wasn't comfortable with that. So I have gone back to do that interview, like I've just said. But what I have done is I have edited out all the editorializing. Try saying that quickly 3 times fast. All Gray's comments where he's basically trying to put out his opinions on the case or his beliefs on what happens. I've edited all that out so that basically all we're getting here is Frank's perspective. There's a few issues, there's a few times when I've also removed things that he's said because he's basically been carrying on part of the conversation with Gray. So it was more about speculation, nothing that he was bringing to the table that was first-hand knowledge of Stephan. So because it is a somewhat shorter interview, I thought it would be interesting to actually look at it back to back with his police interview. By the time I'd edited out a lot of what he said with Gray, it did end up being quite a lot shorter, and I thought, why not just pull out the police interview as well? I think that was only 25 minutes long, and just look at those two interviews back to back. Now, I think someone said also that he did an interview with Jays for Justice, so I'll check that out at some point, and if that's worth looking at, I will also pull that out and have a look. My thoughts, just from briefly listening to him and not really going in depth, is that this guy is possibly just a little bit too stoned to have been observant. Maybe I'm wrong. Now, before I get into this interview, I just want to address something that once again came up during these interviews with Chris and Deb Stearns. And it's something that I feel quite passionate about. So I'm not going to just sit quietly and say, okay, fine, well and good, people can have their opinions on this. I am going to share my opinions and explain why I feel that way. So what am I talking about? Each time I have spoken about people who've seen something going on with Maddie and criticised the fact that they didn't take it any further, every time that has come up in a video, people have come at me with it wasn't their problem, or why bother when there would have been no action on something like that, or they did what they felt they need to do. So, for example, with Deb Stearns talking about Maddie co-sleeping with Stephan and Jen and putting her foot down and saying, well, she can't do it while she's here, and saying that they needed to stop that. And she admits in one of those interviews that she knew they wouldn't stop. They wouldn't listen to her, nothing would change. But she did nothing. And to me, that is wrong. She should have, it doesn't matter that Stephan was her son, she should have reported it. And there were people that got upset with me for saying that. His family, you don't rouse on family. Or she did her bit. She put her foot down and she made sure that Maddie wasn't sleeping there at her place. So she did her bit. She did all she needed to do. And of course the argument of, yes, but had she reported it, nothing would have been done anyway. Here's the thing. We know of multiple people who knew things weren't right in Maddie's world. You have the Disney girlfriend who had Stearns telling her about him coming out of the shower with no clothes on and walking into Jen's bedroom with Maddie there. And that's one of several things that she mentioned that were huge red flags with Stearns. And her comment was, I didn't think it was my place to say anything, essentially. Well, sure, maybe if you are the only person who's seen something that's a red flag and you report it, then maybe contact will be made with the parent, conversation will be had with the parent, something will be made in that child's file, a file will be created, a note will be made, and that's probably as far as it goes. Does that make it not worthwhile? Here's the thing. If 3 people contact protective services, then they've already got an existing file on that child when the second person rings. And it just adds more weight to the need to look into this child. Maybe another phone call to the mother, maybe a visit to the house to have a look at the living arrangements. Maybe that's as far as it goes. But then a third person rings in. Does it escalate to a point where they decide to actually have a talk with the child? You can't say simply, well, my little bit of information is insignificant and they're not going to do anything about it, so I might as well not bother ringing in. Your bit of information could be part of a puzzle. It could be providing additional information for a case that is already known. So the excuse of basically dismissing it as something, well, they're not going to act on just that. No, they might not act on just that. But you don't know how many other people have called in and put reports in on that child. You don't know if there is already an existing report on that child. And your report could be what makes the difference. Your report could be what saves a child like Maddie. So for all those people who have criticised me for condemning Deb, the flatmate, the ex-girlfriend, even the school counsellor, for their inaction, just consider that. Now, I apologise if I've offended anyone, but this is the truth of the situation. Children go through so much, and yes, protective services can be kind of toothless. But if people could lose the mentality of not my problem, not my place to act, this is so insignificant they won't do anything. How many Maddies, how many future Maddies could be saved if only people decided that it was actually their business? So on that note, for those of you who haven't clicked off and unsubscribed, let's jump into this interview or this conversation between Frank and Gray Hughes, and then we will follow up with his police interview.
Okay, so how long have you known him?
Roughly like 3 years, maybe a little over. I met him playing, I got into Warhammer 40K at tabletop, like RPG game, and he was one of the people there, and I clicked with him right away because, he smoked pot, and I was like, oh, okay, I could have someone to, smoke a joint with and play some tabletop game. And after that, he was at my house, religiously, I would say every weekend,
Okay, so this guy even sounds to me like someone who smokes a bit of MJ, which makes me wonder how often and how frequently he does it. And I know that it's legal in the United States, which normalises it, but it still impacts on your mental capabilities. So can we just establish that from the very beginning? I wouldn't be surprised if the reason Stephan was at his place every weekend wasn't so much about the gaming, although that probably was a part of it, but I'm willing to bet that Stephan wasn't the one supplying the MJ. So it was probably convenient to go across to Frank's place and smoke all his stuff. So he's saying that he's known him for roughly 3 years. He's seen him pretty much every weekend. Could have been some quite interesting conversations between the two, that's for sure.
He's always coming over. He's met my kids, met my wife. He's been to my house multiple times. And, I would have never expected, I never noticed a sign, but, he was always a quirky guy, but, it's a nerdy game, so I just figured he was a nerd,
So while he was clearly a little bit impaired by his use of MJ, seems like even through that haze, he could recognise that Stephan was a quirky guy. So he recognised that something wasn't right with him. Probably didn't have any sort of reference to figure out what that particular thing was. We can all Monday morning quarterback on these sort of things, but sometimes it can just be a gut feeling even.
So when you think back when he was coming over to your house, did you ever see him act a little strange with your kids now in hindsight?
No, not once. not once, but also my kids are boys, and they're the ages of, 3, and when he first met Johnny, 5, and my other son was just born. So, no, I didn't get that vibe from him.
Okay, so maybe they were outside of his range, anyways.
Yeah, it seemed to me like he liked teenage girls.
He certainly sounds a little bit alarmed at the thought of the possibility. And who wouldn't be? Even if your children are boys, you would just, at the back of your mind, be, oh my gosh, that guy was around my kids. Now, can we just acknowledge that while Stephan certainly seems to have a type, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can write off other interests with guys like that. He was clearly perverted, so yeah, we can make assumptions, but we can't say that it wasn't a possibility. That said, I would like to believe that these kids weren't ever left alone with Stephan at any point in time. I mean, maybe I'm just old-fashioned, but if you're having mates around to your house and you're going to play tabletop games and you're going to smoke a bit of MJ, surely you're not going to do that around your kids. So hopefully the only interaction that Stephan actually had with his kids would have been maybe when he arrived and the kids were being put to bed or something, or, just in passing. Because, I really hope that those kids weren't around while the adults were doing stuff like that.
Especially after hearing the interview with his other friend, it seemed like he liked 12 to 14, 15-year-old girls.
Well, the thing is he had pictures on his phone of CSAM material with Madeline at the age of, I think, 9 or 10.
Really? I mean, is that confirmed that it was her?
Yeah, it said it. Well, they didn't put the name on it, but you could tell that's what they were referring to.
It was the house. Yeah, it was the house. So that's what I figured.
Yeah.
So, no, I didn't get that weird vibe from him, honestly.
Obviously, since this interview was done, we've had access to more recorded interviews and more documents, which make it pretty clear that it was actually Maddie. He's said on one hand that he thought Stephan was pretty quirky, and he's saying at the same time that he didn't get that sort of vibe from him. Perhaps it's because that they were adult males interacting with each other, and it sounds like Stephan was very good at hiding his interests, let's say.
He was pretty normal around my house. I mean, he definitely had an Adderall addiction, He didn't eat much, that I remember, and, he stayed up all night. He would wake up, way later than, 4:30, 5 o'clock every day. So...
What was he doing? Just...
Who the hell knows? I mean, he woke up 4:30, 5 o'clock. He didn't have a job. I always thought that was weird, that he didn't work, but he had money to buy all these, pretty expensive RPG games.
Well, he said he worked over at Disney in some of those Reddit posts.
Yeah, but that was when I first met him, he wasn't working at all.
Okay, that was 3 years ago? That was 3 years ago?
Yeah, when I first met him, he didn't work that whole time until he went to Kissimmee, moved in with Jen, and they got back together because they had split up at one point, and then he moved back into his parents. I always thought that was weird, that he lived at his parents, woke up whenever he wanted, but had money to buy these expensive Warhammer stuff. I was like, this doesn't add up. His parents giving him money? I didn't really know.
Now, this is a gaming guy who knows the value of the things that Stephan was buying. So we've already heard from Jen and Chris that he was buying a lot of stuff and they didn't know where he got the money from. But now we're hearing from someone who is saying that these things that he was buying were expensive. it really makes me sick to the stomach when I think that Stephan clearly had an additional source of income other than his parents' money, because it just makes you wonder what's out there on the internet. Now, he's pointed out the same thing that Stephan's parents pointed out, and that is that Stephan slept all day and was pretty much up all night. Well, my problem with that, and the huge problem with that, if he slept all day and was up all night, why the heck was Jen allowing him to go upstairs and be unsupervised in a room with Maddie when Maddie should have been sleeping? I mean, for starters, he should never have been allowed in a room by himself with Maddie. But Jen had to have known that he wouldn't have been sleeping. So what did she think was happening when her child was asleep, supposedly up there in the room with this guy who stayed awake all night? What did she think that he was doing all night when he was awake while her daughter was asleep in the same room? The more I hear, the more angry I get with Jen Soto, I have to say.
Yeah, so can you tell me the situation with, when they call each other girlfriend and then
They're not.
stepfather?
They are not. That's what I'm confused about, is why. I don't know who said that they were together, but that's not true, because they've been broken up within like 6 months of him moving there. So, like, within 6 months of him moving there and working at Disney, they were broken up. That's why he moved back to his parents in Northport, because that's where he's been living for the past couple months.
Okay, so maybe you can help clarify that and explain that a little bit better. So he did work at Disney after you guys met, though, right?
Yeah, he worked at Disney. He moved to back there, like a year and a couple months. I can't say an exact, number on that, but that's when he did move back. And then within a short period of time, they were split up again, and he was staying in supposedly a spare bedroom.
So, it sounds like he was there for probably 18 months, the last time he was there. And of that period, he was only with Jen for 6 months. So, why would you keep him there? I just really don't understand the motivation. At one stage, Jen claimed, but, he was still like my best friend. But she still talks about him being a slob and that she couldn't stand having him around. And then she talks about how she claims she was the one who threw him out of the apartment. But if you are broken up with someone, they still shared a bed for 6 months after they broke up, apparently. Why would you do that? And then why, if you are broken up with someone and have them having a room upstairs, if they're not even your partner, why send your child upstairs to sleep in a bed with them? I mean, she should never have done that in the first place. But the fact that they weren't even together, I mean, it really does make you think that there was definitely something more in this for Jen. What was she gaining from this relationship from Stephan?
Okay, so maybe you can give us the timeline. Like when you met him like 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And was he dating Jen at that time?
No, they were split up at that point.
Okay, so he's known her for many years. Like I think he said 6 years.
Yeah, he's known her for a decent amount of time.
And it seems like, though, even on his Reddit post, he referred to Madeline as his stepdaughter. So they must have considered each other like, husband and wife when they were living together, how they referred to each other. But then,
Sorry, I did pull out most of the stuff that Gray Hughes said, but not everything. I just want to point out that Stephan claiming on Reddit that Maddie was his stepdaughter was simply bragging rights. It made it sound like he had a closer connection to her than what he did. It gave validation for him to be talking about this young girl on Reddit so often. It's all part of the calculating personality there. I mean, this guy was all over Reddit talking about himself, sharing his opinions, going on about Maddie, and he probably was aware that if he said, my ex-girlfriend's daughter, that people might start to question it. So for him, it was just easier to refer to her as his stepdaughter. I don't believe that him and Jen actually did see it that way themselves. This was just him putting it that way on Reddit because he thought that it sounded more important. He thought it gave him more ownership of Maddie.
later on, it was boyfriend. And it's strange because she allowed him to, the mother allowed him to come back to give her a ride to school for some reason.
Well, yeah, he was like, okay, this what didn't make sense to me either. Like, there's something like when because we hung out 2 weekends or a weekend before this all transpired. I introduced him to a couple friends. My friends liked him. He was on the outside a normal person, and like a very giving person. Like you wouldn't think this if you met him. But if out of this was out of context, take this whole thing out of the conclusion, you wouldn't think so. You just think the guy had a social problem and he was a nerd.
Now, I realise that he's saying he's known Stephan for 3 years and that they did gaming together. But I question how well he did actually know him. Whether a lot of their time together was spent basically just discussing the game and playing the game and smoking MJ. And that perhaps over that 3 years, the number of conversations about stuff outside of gaming have been minimal. Because, on one hand, he's already said he thought Stephan was quirky. And then, in this part here, he says that he thought he was quite normal. And then he's basically turned around and said that he was socially awkward. But that he would never have thought that he would have done something like this. Well, I think this guy is still trying to, at this point in time, wrap his head around who Stephan was as an individual. Because you can't be normal and socially awkward. And I'm really keen to know what he means by saying he was quite giving. What, maybe he stole money from his parents to buy a bit of an MJ and shared it around because it made him the big guy in the group? Because that's the sort of thing I would imagine. I can't imagine him being like, here, I've got bucket loads of money, have some money. I mean, this is a guy who would not do anything unless there was a benefit in it for him. So, to hear someone say that he was giving just sounds really odd to me.
And he kept to himself.
So he's kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing, basically.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, he said, I don't know where he's moving back there, but what he said, that weekend, He said something. Yeah, he mostly felt bad about the breakup because of Madeline, because they created a strong bond. So, I really don't know.
Okay, well, that's a red flag, isn't it? Sounds like he wasn't overly concerned about breaking up with Jen. His main concern was because he was now away from Maddie because he had a strong bond with her. This is a guy, a 37-year-old guy, who has been in a relationship with a woman with a particularly young child, and his main concern from the breakup is separation from the child. That's essentially what we're being told here. That's such a red flag. Obviously, not something that's reportable. If you rang up CPS and tried to report something like that, they'd laugh in your face. But certainly, in retrospect, when you look back on it, you think, wow, so disturbing.
About, like, you know, he wanted to go back there. He was supposed to go there that weekend that we hung out, but didn't. He went the following weekend, I guess. And also the way the mom's acting, it just, her feelings don't seem genuine. Like, it, you know, it doesn't look like a mom freaking out, I'll tell you that much.
Have you met her before?
I only met her one time, and that was on a FaceTime.
And how was she then?
She seemed pretty normal, you know. I mean, personally, I know, since Stephan's told me, she takes a lot of medication for a lot of mental health things, so I don't know why he stayed there.
Okay, this guy just confirmed what I was thinking when he said that he thought Jen seemed normal. And then he talked about Jen taking a lot of medications. Well, it seems to me like normal for this guy is totally baked. So it sounds like he just saw that she was somewhat influenced, and that was okay because that's just kind of normal in his world.
Why they were split up. That always seemed awkward to me. Like, why would you want to stay in the house with someone you're no longer in a relationship with?
Okay, so maybe you guys met 3 years ago and he lived where, and where were you living at the time?
Oh, I lived at my house. I own a house.
Well, what town? I mean,
Charlotte.
most of us aren't from Florida, so just maybe a town.
Okay. Yeah, I lived in Port Charlotte. He lived in Northport at his parents.
Okay, and then would he break up and get back together again with Jen during this time?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then at some point they were back together since you've known him, right? And then they broke up again. When do you think they broke up the last time? Like 6, 7, 8 months ago?
And no, it was way farther than that. Probably like a year and a half ago. So he's been living at that house until, I forget how long he's been back for, because time flies when you're working and stuff. So I would say at least 3 months he's been back for.
Okay, so he came back and...
He wasn't back for Thanksgiving. He was coming back for Thanksgiving. So he had to be back by at least Christmas. He moved 3 months ago. He moved back to Northport. So he was living there that whole time while they were no longer in a relationship.
Oh, well, was he the only one claiming they weren't in a relationship? Because how do you know that Jen thought that?
Well, that's a bit of a silly question to ask. How do you know that Jen didn't think that they were still in a relationship? Probably from what he told you about the fact that Stephan was actually sleeping in a room upstairs and not with Jen.
That's what he said, that he was staying in a spare bedroom there. So that's the information I have. And he lives back at his parents. So that seems to me, he was staying, he moved there because they were getting back together.
Why was he back over at Jen's house recently?
I guess her birthday. I can't think of, that was the reason that I thought, that I was told.
Now, I'm going to presume that when he said that he went back for her birthday, he was actually talking about Maddie's birthday. because we know that Stephan also told his parents that that's the reason he was going, because of Maddie's birthday, and you have Deb giving Stephan those presents for Maddie. But it also made me think, okay, but was he also going there for Jen's birthday? Maybe he was supplying things. Maybe she was paying for him to go there to supply her with birthday treats. I don't know. But, yeah, it seems like it was possibly a double celebration. Because from what we've heard, that he was planning on staying a full week, which means he would have actually been there for Jen's birthday.
So you guys would play Warhammer quite a bit, right?
Yeah, Warhammer, a couple tabletop card games like Magic the Gathering type of games.
Well, what's that other game that he's really into with that little sort of game toy that he plays with?
Oh,
Yeah.
Tamagotchi.
Tamagotchi.
Yeah, I always thought that was weird. He's almost 40.
Yeah, it seems like something to sort of relate with children type of a game.
Yeah, but also he had a lot of weird stuff. Like, his room, it was nerdy. He was a gamer, so he had a lot of weird stuff. Like Star Wars memorabilia, Tamagotchis, Nerf guns, things like that.
Why would a loner like Stephan need Nerf guns at his house in Northport? That's just so hilarious. I've said this in previous videos, and I have to say it again because Gray has pretty much outright said that having an interest in things that are possibly less mature than what adults would have an interest in means that you are doing it to prey on children. Essentially, that's what Gray was inferring here. No. I mean, if Stephan was actually ADHD or ASD, then that can come with the territory. Having an interest in hobbies, having an interest in collecting things. Not everybody who collects things that may be seen as children's toys is doing so because it makes them more appealable to children. People do it because it's a hobby. It's an interest. They just do it because they want to. So I just wanted to clarify that yet again, because I know it's something that repeatedly comes up when talking about Maddie's case, and I just wanted to stand up for the normal people who aren't perverts, who paint those toys for gaming, who collect things that may be seen as children's toys. Because not everyone is a pervert.
Okay, so it did nothing set off alarm bells for you.
No. I just thought he was a nerdy guy,
So back about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Where was he living then?
His parents. I guess like roughly a year later, then he went with back at Jen's. Within roughly 6 months while he was living there.
Okay. So about 6 months, they break up. And then where does he go after that?
He's living there still, working at Disney. So he supposedly stayed in the guest room or something.
Oh, wow. Okay,
that's what I was told. Mm-hmm. That's what I was told.
All right. They broke up, but he still lived there. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I always thought that was really weird.
That is pretty strange,
Yeah, why would you want to stay in a place if you guys no longer are in a relationship? But,
We know why he wanted to stay there even though he was no longer in a relationship for Jen. And, it was all paid for. Apparently his father paid for the room. So why not? If you've got a job at Disney, which gives you play money, because clearly Jen says that he helped out with food. meaning that occasionally he bought food for them. Not that he bought food every time, but it sounds like he had virtually no living expenses. So, yes, there was no reason for him to move out. His father was paying for the room. He had free access to Maddie. And Jen had no problems with it.
Sometime in December, he moved back. Give or
Okay.
take, you know?
All right. So what? Tell me more about him. Did you ever see him? When he was talking about women, or
That's what I was going to bring that up. There was a woman. We went out that night. I introduced some friends. We all hung out at a bar called Dean's with some music. Like a older woman, a cougar, was 100% hitting on him. And he's single, so I was like, dude, you should grab up on that, man. Go get some. And he just was like, nah, not interested. And I just, like, it made me turn my head a little bit, like, what do you mean not interested? She was just looking for some. And if I was a single guy, why not? Who cares? And he was just not interested. And that always, like, rattled my brain, like, what? What do you mean not interested? Now I know why he wasn't interested.
How is this guy actually married with kids? To hear a guy objectify women like that, basically it doesn't matter what she looks like or anything, just because she shows an interest, you should go for it. Like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, but that sort of attitude, I just can't wear it. There are some guys that really don't get it. And yes, maybe it's because Stephan has an interest for young girls, essentially. But are you going to turn around and say that every man who sees a woman at a club and says, no, I'm not interested, even though she's throwing herself at him, are you going to turn around and say that's because he is inclined the same way as Stephan? I don't think so. So it's a bit of an overgeneralisation. And I mean, I know he's not saying that is a specific link, but him saying that he couldn't understand why, well, just sometimes not all guys objectify every single woman and think that because a woman shows interest that it's free.
She wasn't in his age range. She was like 50 years too young. And then also another thing he had said, I knew it was a lie why he was saying it, because he's no good at lying. It was just like, he was telling us he had some girl from Disney, some spicy Latina. I was like, no, don't believe that for a second. So he definitely lied.
I'd love to hear what he has to say about that now, because we know that Stephan actually for once was telling the truth, and that he was having that relationship with his girl from Disney.
That's a lie that I caught him in. I never said anything to him because, let him talk. Whatever, but I don't think that's true. Because why, if you're already broken up with this woman, why the heck would she be letting you bring random women to her house?
right?
So it's just a lie. It was 100% a lie.
Wouldn't you just automatically presume that if the guy was broken up with Jen and was having a relationship with another woman, that he wouldn't actually be taking her to the house anyway, but would be going to that other woman's house, which we know he did.
Just to, like, look cool and, maybe, not seem normal. Also, when he came back, I mean, he lost a drastic amount of weight. Like, drastic. Like, he looked sick. And I was like, dude, what happened? And then found out he got his Adderall dosage boosted, and he just wasn't eating, and I didn't know if he was abusing it. I know there was days he would take it, days he wouldn't take it. He would call off work some days. He was telling me, from Disney. So I don't know if he was up all night, up all day, and then missing work, or if he chose to call out of work because he wanted to be with Madeline.
So it sounds like he lied to his friend Frank about working at Disney, because we know that he quit Disney when he moved back down to Northport. But it sounds like what he's been saying to his friend Frank was that he was just taking a day off from work. Okay. As for the comment that he had lost a lot of weight since moving back down, well, that's a 3-month period, and, well, when we look at Stearns in that arrest video, he was hardly skinny. So if he lost a lot of weight, then he must have been a bit of a chonker before then. I do believe, in terms of the increased Adderall and stuff, and it makes me wonder if perhaps Stephan's main source of treats, let's say, was down at Northport, and maybe he was accessing more things once he moved back down to Northport. Maybe it was easier to steal money from his parents to buy what he wanted.
Well, I know they had contact when even he wasn't living there. Like, I remember him distinctly bringing that fact up, that she would text him and talk to him.
So what else can you tell me about Stephan?
How to completely shut down a good line of questioning there. Frank has just said that Stephan was continuing to have contact with Maddie after moving back down. I would have been asking, do you know what sort of communication it was? What were they talking about? Are you privy to any of that stuff? But instead, this goof basically shuts down that part of the conversation and wants to know more about Stephan. It was a golden opportunity there, and it was missed.
As in?
Well, just anything that you can think of now that you look back in hindsight.
I mean, I don't really know. I just always thought it was weird that, no one was ever allowed to his house. No one was ever allowed there. His mom bred poodles. The house was packed with dogs. Massive amounts of dogs. I've been in his room one time, and it just seemed like a disorganized mess for someone who takes Adderall. So
this was at the room at his mom's house, parents' house.
Yeah, his mom and dad's house, yes.
Okay, so let's just acknowledge that Deb and Chris have said in the past that Stephan used to have friends around all the time. So my presumption here is that the reason that Stephan wasn't allowed to have people around, as he said, was not so much about his parents not allowing people to come round, but more, I think, because Stephan wanted to get into the MJ and Stephan's friends wanted to get into the MJ, and his parents would not have allowed it. So I think Stephan knew that, and that's why he told them they couldn't go around there. He wouldn't have wanted his parents to know how heavily he was into that stuff, for starters, by the sounds of it. But also, obviously, it was going to cramp his style to have his friends around at his parents' house where he couldn't do the things that he enjoyed doing.
I don't know what happened to his vehicle, because he was driving his dad's car. That's whose car that was his father's car, that Lincoln, the MKZ.
Okay. And so when you guys met, he met up with your other friends, they all thought he was pretty normal and cool and everything?
Yeah. Like, I didn't find out about this till yesterday around 3 or 4 o'clock.
So, again, after this bit, he was cut off by Gray, and I've deleted a whole section. So he didn't actually get a chance to talk about his actual reaction to hearing about what Stephan had done, or his friends' reactions to what Stephan had done. So all we have here is him saying that his friends seemed to think that Stephan was kind of normal also. But can we just recognise that this is a group of people who, it sounds like, got together, did recreational drugs together. So, yep, Stephan would have fitted into that just perfectly. And obviously he wasn't going to sit there and talk about his hobbies, so to speak, in terms of photography and stuff, with these guys, because he wanted to be one of the guys and he wanted to be accepted. These guys can't be blamed for not spotting anything, clearly, because, well, they were the sort of world that Stephan was accustomed to being in from even when he was a teenager.
Yeah, so you and him are you're gamers, and you would meet up every once in a while and play that Warhammer, right?
Well, Warhammer I stopped playing a little while ago, but we mostly played Lorcana, the card game by Disney, Digimon, and we played this other, like, samurai, like, war game that it's like a little deck of cards and you guys verse each other, you know.
Okay, and you guys, and so you are probably somebody that he saw more often than other people recently.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Stephan didn't have many friends. I never heard him talk about other friends, ever.
It's the classic description, isn't it? The guy was a loner. His whole world evolved around the next time he could spend with Maddie. The next time he could get images. Clearly there was benefits with hanging out with this guy, because he could get into the MJ, and this guy also played all the same sort of games that Stephan liked playing. But as far as any other social activities, Stephan was far too busy with his little hobby to participate in any other social activities, and therefore really didn't need, as far as he was concerned, other friends.
And so what would you guys do when you'd be hanging out recently? Just playing those games?
Play the card game, maybe smoke a joint or something, you know? That was about it.
And just have normal-ish
Eat all the time.
conversations?
What would you say, was that?
Just kind of have normal
normal
conversations?
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Normal stuff. I mean, he wouldn't eat every single time. Like, I've never seen him eat at any time when he came over, except once. He had pizza. And that was it. One time. I've seen him eat one time in the past 3 years.
So, in one of the motions that the defence team has put, when they're trying to basically say that the seizure of his phone was illegal, part of their argument was that Stephan hadn't eaten all day. He hadn't had the chance to eat, and it was 12 o'clock in the morning. So it was, you know, for a reasonable person, yeah, if it was 12 a.m. and you'd been up all day and you hadn't eaten, then yeah, you might be a bit foggy-minded. But what they're describing is peak time for Stephan. It sounds like he didn't bother eating anyway, so let's take that off the table. That's got nothing to do with him deciding to hand over his phone. And as for, well, it was 12 a.m. in the morning, so, you know, you're expected to believe that he should have been dead on his feet, asleep. Well, maybe he was, simply because he'd been out driving around at 3 a.m. the night before, back out to St. Cloud. But for him, 12 a.m., that's the middle of the day.
And would you go out to different places with him from time to time?
No, rarely. That was the first time I actually was like, you know what? Let me see if he wants to get... He was supposed to come to a concert with us in a few weeks, but not now. Yeah, no. But, no, I mean, that was the first time I ever introduced any of my friends to Stephan, or Stephan, you know, or my friend, you know. So,
And then his behavior that night seemed pretty normal. He was just chilling out, having drinks, and
He only had a couple beers. I mean, it was a pretty normal night.
but other than the fact that he passed up on, as you called her, a cougar trying to get him.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you, when you were sitting around going, oh wow, yeah, what about this?
Yeah, mostly that cougar thing. The being with the communication with the ex-girlfriend's daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wanting to go back to your ex's house to be at your ex-girlfriend's daughter's birthday seemed weird. Talking about how they had a real strong connection, that seems weird to me now. Also, the like living there while they were, that always just seemed weird to me. But nothing ever came up about teenage girls or young children, ever. I would have never, ever suspected that. She already called the Kissimmee police department, too, because, like, the living there while they weren't together and them calling each other a couple seemed kind of weird to me and kind of like, I don't know, is it a story?
Okay, so kudos to him, because the way Gray was questioning him there made it sound like Gray was really pushing for him to come up with something extra to throw into the mix there, something else to essentially dish the dirt on Stephan. And what he did instead was reiterate the things that he had already said to Gray, the things that stood out to him now, looking back on the situation. So far my observation is that this guy is on the level. He's not making up stuff just for the sake of sensationalism. I think he's being 100% honest. I think he's probably got a bit of a foggy brain though. So that brings us to the end of the Gray Hughes portion. And like I said, I wanted to have a listen also to his interview with the detectives to see if there's anything else in there, that any other indications that he might have given in that interview. Because obviously how you are being interviewed makes a huge difference in terms of the sort of information you're going to be given. So now we're looking at an interview where he's being interviewed by skilled detectives who know what they want to find out, and who are in it not for the sake of dishing the dirt, but for creating more understanding in a case that they are working.
Time you're giving us to talk to us.
Yeah, no worries.
Alright. Date is March 6, 2024. Time is 9:06 a.m. You're at myself, Detective Boris, Detective Smallwood, and Frank. Spell your last name for me. And I have your phone number. All right, so I'm sure you're aware of the reason why we're here. We're doing an investigation of the death of a young lady named Madeline Soda.
Oh yeah, I found out real late in the game. So I only found out like 4 days ago.
Gotcha.
I was just sitting in the back smoking a cigarette, going through Google News, and then all of a sudden that popped up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, holy shit! I would have never expected a day in my life Stephan would do something like that.
Right.
I have heard other people come out and talk on these interviews on YouTube. What they say, how they know Stephan, was completely different how I knew Stephan. So,
How did you know Stephan?
I met him like 3 years ago. I got into a game called Warhammer.
Okay.
And it was just like you painted models and like things like that, and you played them on the table.
Right.
And I got along with him right away. And I was like, okay. And he smoked a little weed, so I was like, okay, someone I can smoke a little weed with and hang out with and
Right.
play some of this game with and bullshit with. So, and he didn't seem like weird. He never gave me those vibes at all. Mm-hmm. But like things recently, things he said like clicked in my brain, like, they weren't together. So
So I believe that this interview occurred after he called into Gray Hughes. And what's interesting here is that you can tell that he's still trying to connect the dots in his head. He's still trying to make some sense of this friend of his who he thought was just a bit of a wacky, weird, quirky individual to have done something so humongously terrible. So far here there's nothing that he's introduced that we haven't heard him discuss with Gray. But I think it shows you that the direction of Gray's interview with him, because Gray was really just trying to dish the dirt, this guy has not had processing time yet. So I actually haven't listened to this interview in a really, really long time, but I'm hoping that the detectives are going to help him weed through it all and get some sort of understanding.
I don't understand why they're saying they're boyfriend girlfriend. They weren't in a relationship. He moved back here because they had broken up.
When did he move back here?
He moved back here like 4 months ago. He wasn't living there, so he went there to visit for something. Like even before they were together. He would go there periodically. This has to be. He moved there 2 years ago, so that would be 2022. So 2021, he would go there like once a month, twice a month. He would go up there and go visit Jen and kiss me.
When's the last time you saw him down here?
I actually hung out with him. When did this happen? What date? Like
The beginning of last week.
beginning of last week. So I guess maybe a weekend or two before. He came out with us. I introduced him to two friends. We went to Dean's downtown in Pennsylvania, hung out. Everything was cool. Even my two friends liked him. So that was the last time I seen him. And then I was wondering why I haven't heard from him, because usually he would come here. Well,
What's interesting about that is that it doesn't appear that this guy has at any point in time attempted to contact Stephan to find out why he hadn't heard from him. He's just basically gone, oh well, Stephan's not around. So it kind of shows you the value of that particular friendship.
Did he talk about Jen or?
yeah, he talked about Jen decently, yeah. But he talked about that. He was talking about that girl more recently, like towards this happening. So it was like he was more upset that because they created such a strong bond. Now I know what that strong bond meant.
So he would talk more about Jen's daughter. Matt, what would he say about her?
Nothing, just like he felt bad for her and supposedly they still had contact.
That's such an egotistical comment for Stephan to have made, that he felt sorry for Maddie. Presumably what he meant was he felt sorry for Maddie over him and Jen breaking up, and that Maddie couldn't have Stephan around anymore. Is that just not the most narcissistic, egotistical thing that a person can say?
In between of them, like him not living there anymore.
Gotcha.
And supposedly when he lived there 2 years ago, because I kept contacting Stephan, he had visited one time. They were broken up within like the first 6 months of him living there. So he was living at the house with them when they were not in a relationship. So,
Did he say why he would go back and visit?
he would go back to visit Jen and the daughter. So.
How would he refer to Jen's daughter? By name, just by
My girlfriend's daughter, Madeline, stepdaughter, sometimes, things like that.
It really makes me angry when I hear that Stephan was referring to her as his stepdaughter. He's creating a relationship that did not exist. And to me, it seems like he was using that as a way of excusing his closeness to Maddie with people who basically didn't really know the relationship. So people who didn't know Maddie and Jen, and therefore didn't know that that was actually just one big fat lie, for him to justify talking about Maddie in the way that he did, he referred to her as his stepdaughter. And that's so disgusting, so devious.
And how did he describe his relationship with her?
It was a strong bond. They had a strong bond.
Okay. How did he describe his relationship with Jen?
Didn't really describe the relationship they ever had.
Okay.
Honestly, they were just a couple.
Well, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, isn't it? So he's never really discussed his relationship with Jen by the sounds of it. It was just one of those things that, we're a couple, full stop, end of story. And yet, when he talks about Maddie, he talks about having a strong bond with her. So, clearly, Stephan had one priority in that relationship, and that was not Jen.
Gotcha. Where was he living when he was down here?
His parents.
With his parents' house?
Yeah, I've only been there one time. We weren't really allowed there.
Why not?
I don't know. His mom bred poodles, so the house is packed with dogs.
Right.
And I only been there one time, and his room was a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like unkept. I mean, I was like, whoa. This
Is that the type of person he is? Is he kind of like a messy person, or?
He didn't seem like that to me, because I mean, all those Warhammer things, that was like complete organization. So for the room to be like that was like a throw off. Like, well, why is it like there's soda cans and candy everywhere? And it's like, I mean, I know he took Adderall, so I mean, he was up all times of the hours. He wouldn't wake up every day until like 4:30, 5 o'clock, maybe 5:30 every single day, which is always weird to me because dude's almost 40, doesn't work, but has money to buy all these expensive Warhammer things.
Do you know where he gets his money from?
That I don't know. I always wondered where the heck he gets. I mean, I thought he was maybe good at saving money, but like, I mean, how could someone save that much money that they have enough money for 3 years? Mm-hmm. So.
I mean, I guess even if we take into account the fact that clearly Stephan had minimal living expenses because most of what he had came from his parents. They paid for the rent on the apartment. The phone that he had was in his father's name, so clearly his father was paying for that. He had his car, but apparently Chris would put fuel in that. I mean, even when you hear about them talking about Stephan going to Orlando that particular weekend, you hear Chris saying that he had put enough fuel in that car for Stephan to get there and back. So even like the cost of going to visit Jen was paid for. So yes, maybe he was good at saving money to buy expensive toys, but from what this guy is saying too, it sounds like the expense of those toys is more than even just what he could have saved up.
Now you mentioned he was taking Adderall.
Mm-hmm.
Was it typical from the time during the time that you've known him to be up all night?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. When he came back, he lost a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Any idea what other medicine he was taking?
Ativan, and I recently added Lunesta, and I don't know because I read a couple documents on there. And I don't know if the category F means the girl was unconscious or anything, but in recent days he talked about how strong that sleeping medicine was and how safe it was. Mm-hmm. So.
And does he take that medication, or is he saying?
I don't know if he takes his sleeping medicine. Mm-hmm. That I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, that I don't know. I've never even seen. I know he takes the Adderall. I've never seen him take the Ativan either. But I know he takes the Adderall. I've seen him take that.
When he refers to the sleeping medication that Stephan claims that he was saying, it sounds like Stephan was going for a bit of a brag there. Have this super great sleeping medication that just completely knocks me out. Just the way he said it, though, made it sound like Stephan was almost bragging about it. Now, what's interesting is that if this guy was on sleeping medications, why the heck was he up all night and sleeping through the day? Because clearly he wasn't using those medications adequately. I think he was just, if he was getting those sorts of medications, he was getting it for the buzz. essentially, or for the effect of them. Now, on that note, because they're not ones that I'm familiar with in Australia, I caught him say the Ativan, but I didn't catch what he said the other medication was. So if someone can just leave a comment in the comment section to tell me what the other medication was that this guy was referring to, and if you know what it's used for, I'm super curious to know what it is that he is discussing. Now, something that we probably should consider here, given that this guy is saying that Stephan was saying that he was taking these medications, but he's never actually seen Stephan with these medications or seen Stephan take these medications. There is also a possibility that Stephan could have been selling his own medications for money, and that he could have been getting an income from that. If he was seeing a counsellor, getting these medications that he could then sell on the black market, I've heard that there's quite a lot of good money to be made with that sort of thing.
Got it. Did when he lived down here, when they were split up, did he have a girlfriend or anything like that down here? Was he dating anybody, seeing anybody, or
No.
Okay. We'll catch him again.
So what is this Warhammer? We've heard this a couple of different times. I understand it's some type of game.
Yeah, it's a game.
And everyone keeps saying it's expensive.
It's real expensive.
What-
It's
like, what is it?
expensive. I got out of it because of how expensive it is.
Okay, explain to us what expensive is.
I mean, dude, it cost me a couple $1,000s within, 6 months. It cost me at least $2,000 with the play that thing. So he had 3 whole armies.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you're talking, you only need 2,000 points to play one game, so 2,000 points equals how much, what the character is. So the character could be 3 points, 5 points, things like that, 10 points, 30 points, 50 points. He had 2 full armies that were 4,000 points plus.
Okay.
So just those alone, paints, characters, everything to put that together, man, that's real expensive.
Okay, and
It wasn't working.
So basically, we're talking about his Warhammer stuff alone. We're not talking about his Tamagotchis, his Star Wars stuff, all the other stuff that he was buying, like the cards as well. Just the Warhammer stuff cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And this guy is saying that Stephan had it in bulk. He didn't just have one set, he had, 3 sets. Now, in terms of, I got the impression that the little figurines that you paint themselves are costly. But not only that, what he said, that the cost of painting them, the sort of paints that they use is the same sort of paints that you use on painting model cars. Just one itty bitty little tin of those paints here in Australia is definitely kind of expensive. So you can imagine the number of tins of paint that he would need. You would be needing to replace brushes quite frequently. And you would be buying the more expensive brushes that would have to be the really fine detail brushes. So specialised brushes, and then whatever particular stuff that you needed for cleaning the brushes with. I'm not sure if that'd be terps or metho or something like that. Not overly expensive stuff, but it still adds up over time. I know a lot of people who paint figurines will also have strong lights that they use for painting them with, or those big magnifying lenses. You see that on Instagram when you see. I follow a lot of artists on Instagram, and when they're doing the fine details with their painting, they use those big magnifying things. So yeah, it would definitely not have been a cheap hobby, and this guy is saying thousands and thousands of dollars. that's more than what I would imagine that someone could have just from being good at saving money or from selling their medications.
Does Warhammer have like kind of its own community?
Yeah, everyone. Even I was talking to a couple guys from it, and they're like, what the hell, They're
And where would these communities be on? Like Reddit, Discord?
I don't do any of that. So I met guy. I had commented on a Facebook post that I saw, like for a comic shop, and then somebody messaged me, and he's like, "Hey, you want to come check it out and like learn about it?" And I was like, "Cool, all right." And that's when I met Stephan. He was already there playing at the shop.
Okay. Do you have Reddit?
No.
Do you have Discord?
No.
Do you know Stephan to have those things?
Stephan has Reddit for sure.
Yeah. What makes you say that?
He used to always tell me to go on Warhammer, like the Warhammer things, and go check for Reddit and stuff like that and Discords.
I find it rather fascinating that this guy is a self-confessed gaming geek, and yet he doesn't have Reddit or Discord or anything. I guess it sounds like he is more into the board game side of things. And, well, he's got Facebook, but it's just really interesting because everyone I know who is a geek at least has Discord for communicating with people. I guess maybe he's a bit older, so maybe not so much, but still, I would have expected, given his hobbies, given what he's been saying, I really would have expected him to have at least had a Discord account.
Okay. Explain to us what Discord is.
To me, on
what
Xbox
reason?
I have it, but it's like you can find people to play like we have used it to find people to play Call of Duty, like Warzone. Sorry. So you can like find people to join in the chat with you, depending on how many players. Like you can go to like different chats in like 3P, 4P, so you can get 4 players, 2 players, 2 players, and then someone random would hop in there and say, "Hey, I'm ready. I'll play a game with you," and then okay, cool, and then you start up a match.
Okay, so he's basically now admitted that he has got Discord that he uses for Xbox. So either he's implying that he doesn't use Discord or Reddit for this game that him and Stephan were playing, or maybe he has discussions on Discord or Reddit that he possibly doesn't want police to be aware of, and he doesn't want them to know that he has these accounts. But yeah, there's a little bit more going on here, but we're not interested in this guy, what's going on in this guy's world, unless he is another Stephan. But I've not heard anything in the way he speaks that would suggest that. I think maybe he's just someone who particularly enjoys his drugs. Maybe his brain's a little bit fried, and maybe conversations that he has on Discord and that are perhaps not overly appropriate for outside observation. Or like I said, he could just be completely fried and having trouble thinking about actually how to explain things properly.
That's the only instance I know that stuff for.
Okay. Do you know anyone that would know if he has a Discord?
No, I don't know. Because I don't even know any. I only know Stephan. I don't know if Stephan even has any other friends like that.
Okay. I didn't know if you had mutual friends from here.
No, only the other 2 guys is the guy who invited me to Warhammer, and the other guy that he's supposedly recently with. I don't want to say names because I don't know if they want to be like me and dad or anything like that and bothered. One kid, his mom was like really sick with cancer, so I don't want to get But I talked to him recently, and I was the only one Stephan told for like a really long time that he was even back. So, but
Why would he keep that secret?
I don't know. I always found that weird. Why would he want to go play Warhammer?
I suspect that the motivation for not telling his friends that he'd moved back was the embarrassment of saying that his parents had decided he had to move back in with them, and that he was suddenly once again unemployed, living with his parents at the age of 37. Probably also wanted to give the impression of being the guy who had it all together, with a girlfriend and a stepdaughter, as he said, working at Disney. To him, that probably made him feel more important. So, yeah, I can understand why he wouldn't say that he'd moved back. And face it, the guy was a lazy slob. He probably enjoyed weekend games with the mates, but not every day, because that would actually involve having to do something other than sleep.
And see all those guys again.
Have you ever met Jen?
Twice on FaceTime.
And what was the context of?
Stephan was just talking to her, and he was here. We were playing Warhammer. And he just took a break to talk to her, and that was really it.
Okay. During those, do you remember when that was?
Oh, that was before he moved there. So he moved there like 2022 around that time. So I don't know, maybe within 6 months. 8 to 6 months, 6 to 8 months prior, I guess.
And I think I already asked it, but did he tell you what kind of relationship him and Jen had? Was it a good relationship, or?
I mean, if he was moving there, I guess, because they were doing like long distance and stuff like that. So I guess it was pretty good. I guess.
How telling is it that this guy's known Stephan for 3 years, and yet he's got no idea about Stephan's relationship with Jen? Because clearly it's not something that Stephan has ever really discussed. That to me says there was never any significant relationship between them. Because if there was, you would have expected there to have been plenty of conversations about Jen.
Now, it seems like you're pretty good friends with Stephan, so did he ever have any kind of sexual conversation with you? Like, hey, this chick's hot, or anything like that?
Never.
I'm not talking about just kids. I'm just talking about women.
No, that never. Definitely not that, because I would have lost my mind. So, he would have never been allowed in this house ever. I don't condone that behavior.
Even if he made comments like that about adult females.
He didn't at all. That's what I'm saying. Never. We were at Dean's, and a older woman, a cougar or whatever, came up and was 100% hitting on him, and he was single at that time, and I was like, you should go for that, and he showed zero interest. I was like, I was always that threw me off a little bit, but now it doesn't throw me off because of what's transpired.
This is the most animated that this guy has been. The need to deny having any knowledge of what Stephan was into. It sounds to me like someone who has had a friendship with someone and doesn't want to be tarred by the same brush. I mean, this is a guy who has 3 young children of his own and is married. And it sounds like, while he might like the recreational MJ, he does say that he works. So it sounds like he has better values than Stephan. And clearly he understands how horrible Stephan's actions were, and it sounds like this guy is a fairly decent guy, just kind of a little bit fuzzy in the head perhaps. Unless, of course, the denial is because he has similar interests, but there's nothing that would suggest that to me at all. I think this is just someone who wants to separate themselves from someone who used to be a friend and make sure that it's clear that they're not at all like that themselves.
But he didn't talk to you about the relationship him and Jen had?
No, they didn't. He just last time I talked to him, I said, how's it going over there? Oh, we broke up. And he was living there still. So that was very weird to me. Why would you want to live in a place where you and the person aren't any longer in a romantic relationship for? But now it makes sense why he was staying there.
Did he ever talk to you? Did he ever tell you why he would go visit Jen?
Yeah, to go see Jen and the kid. You know, he was there all the time. He built a relationship with him.
It's a shame that the detective didn't specifically ask him, is that what he said? Did he say that he was going there to see Jen and the kid? Or if he had said it a different way. In other words, what I'm saying is Frank here just making the presumption when Stephan said that he was going down there, that he wanted to go down there to see Jen and the kid? Or did Stephan say it specifically that he was going there to see Jen and Maddie? Because I would like to know Stephan's actual explanation of these trips. Was he saying that he was going down there to see Jen? Was he saying that he was going to see Maddie? Was he saying he was going to see both? Or was he just saying he was going there for the weekend, saying I'm going to Orlando for the weekend, without actually specifically giving the reason, and this guy is filling in the gaps? Because it is significant. If he's saying that he wants to go there to see his ex-girlfriend and her child, then why is it so important to include the child in that particular relationship? I'm not sure if I'm explaining that very well. But it is a little bit of a red flag that he's so obsessed with Maddie by the sounds of the things that he has said with his friend.
When he said that they had split up but he was still living there, did he tell you how that living arrangement was?
I'd like to say he told me there was an extra bedroom.
Okay.
You know, I'm pretty sure that's what he said. I don't know the apartment, so I don't know what it looks like in there, but I'm pretty sure that's what he said to me. I don't think he would have been staying on the couch. You know, that would have really made no sense to me, but I'm pretty sure he said there was an extra bedroom in there.
Okay, did Jen ever come visit him down here? Do you know?
No, she never came down here. No. But she definitely provided him Adderall, that I know. She definitely, when he would run out, she definitely once or twice has provided him with Adderall. So.
Now, if that's true, that's disturbing, because we know that the Adderall was Maddie's. And now I don't know if it was the same in America, but in Australia, those sort of things are restricted in terms of how frequently you can refill a prescription for those medications. I would imagine there would be limitations on how frequently Jen could refill an Adderall prescription, meaning that Maddie was probably under-medicated for her ADHD, and maybe even, well, we know there were occasions when she was at school and apparently not medicated at all for her ADHD. So, was Jen messing around with Maddie's meds? Because, of course, the question would have to be, what has Stephan got to gain from lying about Jen providing him with Adderall? And I can't see what there is for him personally to gain from that. So, to me, that makes me think that it wasn't a lie, and that Jen probably was providing him with extra Adderall. So then, of course, the question is, where was the Adderall coming from? I don't recall Jen ever saying that she was on Adderall. So the only possibility seems to be that Jen was giving Stephan Maddie's ADHD medication.
Did he ever mention if Jen had any roommates or anything like that?
No. I've never heard anything. He didn't really explain much of anything. Just that he was going out with this girl, that they had broken up within like 6 months of him moving in there, and then he still lived there until, roughly 3-4 months ago. He moved back to his parents.
Okay. And you said the last time you actually spoke with him was when?
Like a weekend or two before this actually happened. So
now, was that
I
via
can
text or?
I can actually look it up right now. It's not on my phone from him, but I'm talking to my buddy Duke.
It was great. It's like the first time I've seen Stephan socialize outside of the game.
Yeah. I was like, you know what? Let me see if Stephan wants. Like, only thing I know Stephan was socializing was coming to this house and playing some card games and stuff like that, or going to the comic shop.
Yeah, it was something I seen on him.
Yeah.
Watch out, Loki.
Okay. So, what date was... February 18th was a Sunday, right? I'm pretty sure. Let me check. Yeah. So, I hung out with him February 17th.
That was a Sunday or Saturday?
That was a Saturday, because February 18th was a Sunday.
So basically, this guy was hanging out with Stephan a week before he went up to Kissimmee and did what he did with Maddie.
When's the last time you guys conversed over the phone, or how would you guys talk? Via text, phone calls, Snapchat, or whatever?
Text. Okay. Yeah, and
do you still have any of those texts on your
No.
Why not?
I work, so my phone gets tons and tons of texts. I get over 3,000 texts a week. So I can't. But once a week, I delete all my text messages
Got it.
because I get so many. So it's hard for me to even flip back things. If I was to flip back to things me and my wife talked about, it would take me a month just to go back a week.
Got it.
Okay, on the surface, that sounds logical. But I'm sorry, if you had a phone that you used for work and you had that many messages during the week for work, wouldn't you have a separate work phone? It just seems... And also, if you've got jobs, why would you want to delete messages that could possibly be used at a later date to clarify any issues that might arise? So that is a little bit of a red flag for me, that this guy is saying that he's got no messages between him and Stephan and he deletes his phone. You've got this guy claiming that he doesn't have Discord, he doesn't use Reddit, he doesn't have any messages on his phone. Well, I don't know. These are things that do give me a slight pause and make me want to question him a little bit.
So,
What do you do for work?
I'm an irrigation technician.
Oh, okay.
So obviously it's a respectable line of work, but really, thousands of messages a week for an irrigation technician? I mean, he's saying essentially he's a tradesman. So people obviously do have to contact him through the day about various things. But if you had thousands of messages a week, how would you even get your job done? It's not quite adding up for me. So if anyone can put a comment below to help me understand this. Am I missing something here? Because it really does not add up.
So you know a little bit about his parents, and they breed poodles.
Yeah, I know his dad.
You know where they live?
Northport. I can't tell you the name of the block. I've literally been there once.
Okay, so you have been there.
Yeah.
Do you know them to own any other properties?
No, I don't even, I've heard things on these YouTube things, and, it surprised me a couple things. Like, they're supposedly their mom paid someone off or something like that.
Yeah,
I never heard these things.
What
like,
you know.
Nothing about them. I've met them one time.
Do you know if they rent anything?
No. That's what I'm saying. I don't know anything about them.
Okay.
I met them.
You don't know
time.
them to own a storage unit, anything like that?
No. I've literally met them one time. I've met the dad. I shook his hand once. I've met his mom. I've said hello to her once. And I was in there for maybe 15 minutes, and we left because of how loud it was because of the poodles.
So what he's saying here is that clearly Stephan never talks about his parents, and he's only had this one interaction with them, so he knows nothing about them. It's interesting that he says that they were there for 15 minutes and they left because of the amount of noise that the poodles were making, because we saw the Hidden True Crime interview, and that was a 2-hour interview once it was edited. So obviously it was way more than 2 hours, and the dogs were pretty quiet the entire time. So it sounds to me like the dogs did not like this guy. If they were being noisy the whole time, then it sounds like they may have been barking at him. Perhaps they were barking every time he spoke. And I trust dogs when they are cautious of a person. Unless, of course, they've got a history. My big dog has a thing about people who wear Blunston boots, work boots essentially, and she needs them to be quite reassuring of her before she's going to accept them. And this is the sweetest dog on the planet. But for him to be saying that these poodles were way too noisy, and he's said before about the poodles being, the house being full of dogs, so it's just interesting.
Okay. For Warhammer, is there like a username and stuff for that? Gamer tag?
No, it's just Stephan.
Okay.
Yeah, you go by your first name. It's not like anything like that.
So Warhammer's not online. It's like a
it's actual in-person game.
Oh, okay. Now
That's when you said Discord or Reddit for it. No, like maybe a Reddit because you can like buy and sell them on Reddit or something like that. He's always told me to go check that out, but I've never been much of a Reddit user, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried.
I didn't know if it was kind of like a World of Warcraft or something like that. Isn't that online?
Yeah, no, it's not like that.
No.
It's just an actual. You paint this stuff and you're on the table playing. There's like a mat and it's like things like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now I better understand.
Yeah, no. This is like an in-person game, just kind of like Magic the Gathering or like a Pokemon cards game, stuff like that.
So I've seen some interesting theories put out there about this, Frank, by various commenters. And I'm starting to see where these come from, because having said that he knows nothing about Discord or Reddit, you might have missed it, but he just admitted, well, I've tried Reddit. So he has actually been in Reddit. He has a Reddit account. He does have a Discord account, which he claims he only uses for Xbox. So it seems like he's trying very hard to direct the detectives away from any kind of digital media that he has. You don't need to look at my phone because I don't keep my text messages from people. I delete them every week. You don't need to ask me about Discord or Reddit because I know nothing about them. Although, by the way, I have used them occasionally. Definitely, there's something a little bit odd about his need to avoid questions about his digital footprint and to not have detectives look at these things.
Okay.
Yeah. But this is like actual like models that you build and put together and like paint and like that's why it's so expensive.
That's why it's so expensive because you buy them in little packs and then you individually paint each one. So you got to buy the paints and all the brushes.
Yeah, pack is minimum.
And then you would battle somebody.
Yeah.
On the table.
Yeah, and roll dice.
Make
roll
like
dice. Choose what like attack you're gonna do and things like that.
And stuff like war vehicles and stuff like that.
Okay.
Just because I'm recording this and yeah. Your name is?
Oh, I'm sorry. Brittany.
Brittany, what's your last name? And you guys are husband and wife?
I mean, we've been together, not legally, but we've been
Boyfriend,
together
girlfriend,
for a long time. 10 years
Okay.
plus. So,
What's your date of birth?
yeah, the reason I called, because I was one of the last person that I'm pretty sure he saw before this all happened. So, I mean, I can only tell you what.
Did he tell you he was going to Kissimmee?
He was supposed to go to Kissimmee that weekend that we hung out on the 17th.
Why didn't
But
he
then
go?
didn't. So he was like, I don't know, I'll let you know. And I was like, okay. And he's like, all right, I'm not going to go. I'll come hang out.
Did he say why?
Nope.
Now, I apologise if I end up repeating myself at any point during this. My iPad, I think it just cooked in the heat, possibly. So I'm basically re-recording the entire last portion of this video. So, a few things there. I'm not sure if I mentioned it or if that was the audio that I lost. Certainly sounds like the cost of these figurines is more than what it would have cost for someone who just happened to be really good at saving money or someone who was selling their medications. You know, it's the cost of those little tins of enamel paint alone, I know in Australia is quite huge. So there's all the extra costs on top. So I think he might be definitely right there. In terms of him having supposed to have gone down the previous weekend and not having done so, that's really interesting because we know that according to his mother that he had been planning on going down since the previous weekend. So I wonder if the original plan was for him to go that weekend, and that weekend was going to be the celebration of Maddie's birthday with just him and Jen. And then something changed. Maybe his dad said, look, I'm not paying you fuel money to go down 2 weekends in a row, so you have to choose. Or maybe there was some other reason, who knows. But it is interesting to hear that he was supposed to go down the previous weekend and didn't.
Nope. But he was talking about that girl that day, how they supposedly still had contact, and
Why would he bring her up? Like, how would
like it
that
was
conversation
like
even start?
they were talking about the breakup, him and my friend, and then that girl just came up out of it. Like, oh, he was sad that, or like upset because they had created such a strong bond or something like that,
So
now
he-
that seems weird to me. Then it didn't really seem weird to me because it was just like, okay, you were with this person for a while, you lived there, this is a child,
So he was telling you, and correct me if I'm wrong, that he was upset that him and Jen broke up because he created
Well,
such
yeah,
a strong
me
bond
and the
with.
person that were here that I had introduced him when we were going to go out. That, yeah.
But that was the context of his conversation, is that he was upset that him and Jen broke up, or breaking up,
Yeah.
broke up because he was upset about the strong bond that he created with Maddie.
Yeah, but now we know it's not a bond. It's fucking sick. So.
Right, it seems so innocent when it's just said without context. Like, if
Yeah.
I was in a relationship with somebody long term, several years, and now their kid, we're splitting up, of course I'm going to miss that kid. But now with the context, it just seems.
Hindsight's 20/20, right?
Right, exactly. When you talk it, it's just regular. It seems so innocent.
Right.
And when he sent me this, I was like, what? Is that. What? I mean, my kids love him. He's,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I never would have thought in a million years Stephan would have been capable of this type of behavior.
Right. This one, I was watching the video. I had a
Yeah, I was
close
like,
on his face, and he's
yeah.
like, "Oh, that's nothing. Daddy's friend." I'm like, "Yeah, he's in trouble." And he just kind of left.
Okay, for the zillionth time, I don't know what's going on with my audio, but this is taking forever. So, I wanted to point out that he doesn't appear to have been really clear in his explanation in terms of whether Stephan expressed to him that he was also disappointed to have been split up with Jen, or if his sole concern was that he was split up and not therefore able to see Maddie. I think it's pretty clear in retrospect that Stearns' only concern was that being split up from Jen basically removed him from Maddie, and that him and Jen never really had any sort of respect for each other. But it would have been interesting to have heard a clearest perspective from one of Stearns' friends from around the time as to what Stearns actually thought of Jen. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks for listening. I'm not sure how useful this interview with this Frank has been, but it was worth listening to it just to see what he had to say. As far as we know, this is the only contemporary friend of Stearns other than the girlfriend, the Disney girlfriend. And obviously that was a sort of somewhat limited relationship. I think from memory that Frank is one of the people listed down amongst the list of people for depositions. So it would be interesting to see if there is actually more information that comes out from him in trial, if he actually is one of those individuals. So on that note, I'm going to finish up here. So thanks for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit the like button and, of course, leave a comment below. They're things that help me to get my channel seen by more people and, of course, help me to grow my channel. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.